You bet.
Let's bring in now Republican Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, we welcome you. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, here we go, day 3. You predicted early on, as far as the timing of all of this, that this trial would not drag on. Over the past 48 hours, have you changed your mind on that at all?
Well, Sandra, I can tell you from a personal sense, it certainly seems to drag on late into the night as the House Democrats repeat themselves time and time again. If they had strong evidence, though, I think they'd simply present that evidence and let it speak for itself. But they don't. That's why what we heard yesterday were repetitive arguments over and over again based on little more than hearsay and the House Democrats' objections to Donald Trump being the president and being able to set foreign policy for this country. I expect, unfortunately, that we'll probably hear more of the same today.
Some of your colleagues have made the case, Senator, that many members of the Senate were not following this as closely when it was in the House, the multiple hearings that took place there, or even read the transcripts. So have you learned anything new, particularly as you listened on to Adam Schiff for 2.5 hours yesterday?
Sandra, it's right that a lot of senators are really digging into this deeply for the first time because we've been doing our own work over here in the Senate for the last 4 months, work that the American people want us to do, like better trade deals or rebuilding our military. One thing I've seen as I've listened to these House Democrats for the last few days is just how flimsy the evidence is to support their case, based primarily on hearsay, and again, repeating themselves over and over again because they don't have the evidence that would just speak for itself. And also the kind of grandiose statements about Ukraine being at grave risk and soldiers dying on the front. Let me tell you, Sandra, 5 years ago, I was near the front in Ukraine. I was visiting with some of their volunteer militiamen who had just come back from fighting Russian-backed separatists. They pleaded that we send them Javelin anti-tank missiles. One of them said to me, Mr. Senator, we don't need 100 Javelins, we just need 1 Javelin, because that's all it would take to send the message to those tank crews from Russia. Yet Barack Obama, for 3 years, sent them nothing but blankets and meals ready to eat. Donald Trump is the one that sent those Javelins to Ukraine along with other weapons so it could defend itself from Russian separatists.
So I hear you defending the president's foreign policy on this. As we discuss this in the context of the ongoing trial and whether or not anything new is being learned, we've certainly heard from you just now and many of your Republican colleagues that you're hearing repetition and not hearing anything new, or at least anything that's changing your mind on what you've already decided. However, John Kennedy left the chamber yesterday and reportedly through the New York Times, he told a reporter he's learned a lot. Everybody has. Senators didn't know the case to begin with. He's listening. Lisa Murkowski, she reportedly told reporters as she walked out during a break, she's still listening. So are you getting a sense from any of your Republican colleagues that any minds are or may be changed through this process?
Sandra, the sense that I'm getting is a lot of Republicans are surprised, again, at how flimsy the case is, how little there is to support the House Democrats' claims other than hearsay. You know, they keep saying they have an overwhelming case. If they had an overwhelming case, they wouldn't be demanding that the Senate do the work that the House wasn't willing to do, subpoenaing documents and witnesses and going to court if necessary to enforce that. The Democrats refused to do that in the House because they wanted to rush this through to try to hurt the president's re-election chances.
When it comes to the timing, of course, witnesses being called or not called is going to have a lot to do with that. Heading into this, you said it was very important to hear from both sides and approach this from a very sober and serious standpoint. When it comes to the idea of witnesses, Chuck Schumer seems to be shooting down the idea of a witness swap. Here's the senator.
I think that's off the table. First of all, the Republicans have the right to bring in any witness they want. They haven't wanted to, and that trade is not on the table.
Senator, how do you counter that?
Well, Sandra, I wouldn't think about it in terms of a trade. I would think about it in terms of the witnesses that we may need at the end of the opening arguments. Right now, I simply don't see a need for any witnesses, in part because the House Democrats don't really have a good explanation for why they didn't pursue these witnesses and documents months ago. The only real explanation is they wanted to rush this through, be done before Christmas, and try to hurt the president's re-election chances. But if we get to the point where we call witnesses, I certainly don't think that we should only have Democratic witnesses. And if the White House lawyers want to call Hunter Biden to understand exactly what he was being paid $80,000 a month to do, then I think that would be entirely appropriate.
We will see you back in that room this afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Senator Tom Cotton, really appreciate you coming on this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right, more to come on the